I guess the most important question to me and to others would be, the result is, of course, the most meaningful result that can exist in college football, of course. But in regards to there being systemic issues with this program that need to be changed.
Yeah, not good enough. Not good enough. Lost the second half once again. Granted, Ohio State was down at halftime, but Ohio State could not get Michigan off the field. Its offense off the field in the second half. And we go back a year prior, and Ohio State's too aggressive. And then we go and look at this year, and Ohio State maybe is a little too timid. Ohio State just it seemed in small periods that Ohio State was able to put it all together and look very impressive on its offensive side of the ball, and then Michigan would just come right back and answer. And I think everybody's trying to find who the scapegoat is, where does the blame go. I think that there's plenty of blame to go around. We hear Ohio State talk about all year, we're preparing for Michigan 365 days a year. Well, I didn't really see them playing with a different deck than they play with the other 11 games. They were playing with the same deck of cards. And while it was good enough to escape Notre Dame with a last-second win, while it was good enough to win at home against Penn State, there were not enough face cards in that deck for them to be able to get away with that against Michigan. And I think if you look at how the two sides coached, we saw Sharon Moore coaching the way Ohio State did against Georgia. They went for it on multiple fourth downs. Ohio State played it very safe. And I think that was the biggest surprise, because we heard leading up to the game that, this was a motivated and angry team, and they wanted to do this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, they just did the same thing as usual. And now it's kind of turning into the same thing as usual, is running off a great season only to get your legs cut off by Michigan at the end. And that's not an outcome that anybody is willing to accept.
Tony?
I think we're looking at this as 3 games, but this was one game that Ohio State lost as an underdog against the number now 2 team in the nation, where Michigan hit their 50-yard field goal and Ohio State didn't. And if you switch those things, Ohio State is lining up for a field goal to win the game at the end. Or if you get that one touchdown at the end, are we having this discussion about systemic changes that need to be made? We're talking about one series causing the rise or fall of this. And, I see people get upset about it. I see people dismiss it. Who to blame? I think it's okay to credit Michigan winning this game, and credit Michigan for winning the game 3 years in a row in 3 different ways. And Ohio State changed things defensively to keep Michigan from doing the thing they did last year, when this is not the same Michigan team as it was last year. It's not as explosive as it was last year. This is a Michigan team that has adapted and wins like molasses at times, just overwhelms you, like a semi-truck, tanker truck crashing on the highway, just oozing molasses down the road. And, it's like a 15% grade. You can't get away from it, and it's just going to overwhelm you, and you can try to get out of it, but it's just all very viscous and sticky. And that's Michigan's offense. And Ohio State couldn't get off the road and got overwhelmed in the second half. And, I don't think it helped that Tommy Eichenberg had a busted elbow or dislocated elbow that he's playing with. But, I think it's okay to credit Michigan's game plan and what they did. And I know, we can talk about the Kyle McCord's first interception, which I think is just as devastating as the second one. And there's plenty of blame to go around, but I think it's also okay to credit Michigan.
Steve?
To digest it and, dissect it. And there's so many things that you can say and have been said. And Ryan Day has been a lightning rod for criticism. Kyle McCord People never want to see him take another snap at Ohio State as the quarterback. A lot of people don't. And, it's it's just kind of the way of the world, I suppose, that either you win or you're a bust. And, they're 11-1, and yet that's nowhere near good enough for a lot of the fans out there who've been spoiled by beating Michigan year after year after year, for much of the last 25 years. So what really hurts was everything that was at stake this year, the Big Ten championship, a chance to get back on top in the Big Ten, the college football playoff, almost a certainty with a win. And then, just everything that had gone on in and around the Michigan program in the weeks leading up to this game. This was the time for good to conquer evil, and for Ohio State to put Michigan in its place. And the cheating never prospers. Instead, cheating definitely does prosper. And, it's deflating, I think, for a lot of Ohio State people to be, back in this same position. First time Michigan's won 3 games in a row since 95, 96, 97 over Ohio State. I mean, that's 26 years ago, the last time that happened. So, you don't want to go back to those times. Is Ryan Day the John Cooper of the 2020s? I don't know. And I think it's, premature probably to say that. But this program in a lot of regards is at a crossroads, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of these topics. But the quarterback, the offensive line, the defensive line, the play calling, the linebacker play, I think you can take, all these things and, say Ohio State's not where it needs to be in a lot of those areas. I'm sure we can get into that as we go along.
Yeah, we could do like 4 or 5 hours on this game and the aftermath and what it means and all that business, but I'd be sitting here by myself after about an hour and 10 minutes. So we won't do that. And you all have done your yeoman's work on your respective platforms, breaking this thing down. We've been here, ad nauseum doing the same thing. So I'm not going to do too much on the game unless you guys want to take it that direction. In a sense, this is your show. I only get you guys for an hour each week. So I want you guys to take it in whatever way. And I don't want to be too nitpicky about specific plays, but Emeka Egbuka drops a pass on a slant on the 3rd play of the game. Who knows how far he's running? Regardless, anytime somebody drops a pass on 3rd down or that pass drop obviously stops a drive, my instant thought is, okay, how many drives are going to be in this game? 12 drives, whatever it is. That killed one. Killed. The defense didn't stop you. That killed a drive. And then the way Ryan Day, of course, and I'm sure you guys have dissected this again to a T, the end of the first half. Not just the field goal choice, but even the beginning of that drive. And I know you take some risk here, but you run that thing off tackle twice against that defense that is just geared up for a run. And you put McCord in a bad position on 3rd and 10. Now, Julian Fleming bails out even more Ryan Day, in my opinion, than Kyle McCord, because you're punting, you're most likely setting yourself up to punt from your own end zone, give the ball to Michigan at the 35 or 40 to go up by 2 scores at halftime. I just thought they needed to be more aggressive and trust their quarterback right there. He bails them out again. They get out to obviously, move 65 yards for naught. 4th and 2 at the 33. I'm even saying before they make the choice, you got to go for it here. The kickers never made a kick this distance. This pressure, I know it's not end of game, but this game, this stadium, 31 degrees outside. What are you doing?
Steve, you're muted.
And Marvin Harrison gets tackled and makes the catch. They threw the flag, but the penalties declined. 44-yard play. They're at like the 41-yard line with a minute and like 5 seconds to go. And You're down 4. Michigan's getting the ball to start the second half, so you had to get something. You really needed to get something there, and they threw like a screen pass to Trey Onum for incomplete. Blah blah blah. Eventually, Stover, I think, dragged a tackler down to where it was 4th and 2 with 30 seconds to go, and you could have lined up and gone for the first down. Where I think they made the mistake is after the bomb. Okay, Marvin's blown out. He's probably not going to run a deep route. But, send a Mecca and send Xavier Johnson on a route to the end zone on first down. Maybe they get tackled. Maybe they throw a flag, and now the ball's at the 15-yard line. Or, sorry, the 25-yard line, and you're rolling. You got a chance to do something with 45 seconds, 50 seconds left. Or, God forbid, they catch it and it's 1st and goal at the 5-yard line, or it's a touchdown. He never went for it. You can't be in a mosh pit 30 minutes before the game out there bouncing off of guys, doing all this dumb bullshit, and then get into the game and coach the game like your sphincter is this freaking tight. One is not incongruous with the other. It just doesn't, it's all for show. If you're doing the mosh pit, but then you're not going to coach the game like Sharon Moore did, then it's all for show. It's dumb bullshit is what it is. And so he's 0 for his last 3 against them, and he's going to have to pick it up. They've got, like I said, I outlined these 4 or 5 things. He's got to settle these 4 or 5 things. And, my column before the season, I probably said it on this show, the season will be determined by who establishes the run in the second half of the Ohio State-Michigan game. I said that in September, and by God, it came true. Michigan played keep away at the end of this game and got the extra field goal and won the game. And Ohio State's left to cry in its beer again, for the 3rd year in a row. And, I know we were talking about that situation in the half, and I've kind of digressed off of that. But I think, I wrote this in my column this week. I said, okay, you had your fun. You tried it your way. No running quarterback, substandard offensive line, defensive line, never solved it. Bull crap. Get out there in the portal, wait through there. Michigan had starters from Stanford and Arizona State on the offensive line. Ohio State, after spring football, knew they had an epidemic issue when it got a guy from San Diego State who was a stopgap. It's not show friends, it's show business. Go get some actual guys who can freaking play, pay them what they want, what they need, and get them in here. It's time to quit screwing around with this program. And, until they get their hands dirty and go get some guys that can play like Michigan did, then the result's going to be the same. College football is changing, and the playoff with 12 teams, it's going to be a different landscape. And I think that, you can cut your nose off to spite your face. If, I get it. Ryan Day, has got a Michigan issue now. It's kind of spiraled out of control on him. And if there was ever a Michigan game that Ohio State needed to win, that was the one, and they didn't get it done. So, they may need to win the next 2 or 3 just to live that one down. So, what would be crazy is if somehow Ohio State backdoors their way into this playoff, which is not – it's got about a 1 in 15 chance of happening probably with – Washington beating Oregon, Louisville beating Florida State, Oklahoma State beating Texas. That might be enough, right? Oh, Georgia has to beat Alabama too. That might be enough right there, those 3 or 4 games to get it done. What would happen in a few weeks if there was somehow a rematch between Ohio State and Michigan? I think Ryan Day would love another shot at that team this year on a neutral field. seems unlikely it would be in the semifinals, but maybe in the championship game if it shook out. Could have happened last year, but it didn't. So could redemption come earlier? I don't know, but again, I see Chad posted at 16-1 the odds of that happening. I don't know that they need Washington to beat Oregon, although I think that would help, because Washington would be 12-1 and their resume would be marginally about the same as Ohio State's at 11-1 if Oregon wins that game. But they definitely need the other three, because I think Texas at 12-1 and a league champion would go in over Ohio State at 11-1 probably, with a win over Alabama for them. So I know they're playing Oklahoma State, who's only like 15, 16, something like that. But we're sitting here, in the few days after the Michigan game ruminating about that. But, it would be nice if there would be a rematch this year.
Yeah,
we're pinning our hopes on that. Probably not much of a shot.
In terms of Ohio State's backdoor into the playoffs, basically you need Oklahoma State to beat Texas, and that's the 12 p.m. game. So if that doesn't happen, you can forget about it. If it does, now you can start to get interested, because I don't think the Pac-12 has any impact on what is going to happen or what needs to happen, because they're not getting two teams in. And I don't think Washington with a loss gets in, because the committee doesn't necessarily love what they've done this year. So I think obviously the Georgia win, Michigan win, Louisville win. Louisville's a 3-point underdog. So really the only major upset that needs to happen is Oklahoma State over Texas. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen. In terms of Ryan Dawes with the super chat, I mean, it nearly soothed everything last year. The loss to Michigan would not have even ever been a topic of conversation again if Ohio State, Noah Ruggles, makes that 52-yarder or whatever against Georgia. That would have been a footnote on the season. And so when people say this is the last great year of the rivalry, I could point to last year's game and say it was pretty meaningless when Ohio State was running up and down the field on Georgia. And people weren't too concerned about that loss at that point. Now we're talking about it again because it's a third in a row, so it kind of builds. So I don't think it's always going to be important. Just look at how much we're talking about it. Look at how much the Michigan fans are in our chat, just exposing the depravity of their souls, basically, and the frustration of Ohio State fans. I will also say, leaving that game, Stephen, you may have seen it as well. Walking through the concourse, because we have to leave the press box and to leave a building to get to the post game. I didn't see Ohio State fans that were sad or upset. I saw Ohio State fans that were pissed. They were mad. And this just tells you the mood of the fan base, and there's anger, and they get tired of watching Ohio State lose to Michigan. It's been 3 years now. I don't think next year's game is going to be any lesser in terms of wanting it, but obviously the loss to Michigan or Michigan's loss to Ohio State won't knock either of those teams necessarily out of the playoffs. There'll have to be other losses, but again, there had to be other losses last year, and it didn't happen. And Ohio State made the playoffs. Ohio State has a road to the playoffs this year, so the 4-team playoff has kind of already diminished the stakes, but or maybe also the BCS did, or when the Big Ten allowed more than just one team to go to a bowl game. Like, all of these little incremental things have maybe lessened the rivalry at that point, but we see it still as big as ever. It's still as devastating to lose as ever. And I think maybe the difference here is for Ohio State, it keeps getting worse and worse. By the time Michigan was losing 3 in a row, it was what it was. And I don't think Ohio State will ever get to that point of it is what it is. And maybe that's certainly the thing you need. One of the things you need to make sure it doesn't go to 4 in a row. And although having the game at home should help quite a bit. And also, my last point on this, if the NCAA gets a hold of Michigan, before next year's game, and this is a depleted Michigan, or it's depleted by the NFL or whatever, and Ohio State wins, I can see people talking about, well, it wasn't Michigan's best team, and you try to discount the win that way. But of course, that's a long way off, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that.